Welcome to today's news discussion. I'm Sarah, and I'm joined by Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean. Let's dive into the stories we've got for today.
First up, we have some information about BBC News programming. The latest national and international stories are featured on BBC News.
That's right. The article mentions that BBC News airs on BBC News HD at various times. Can you specify when exactly?
According to the details, BBC News airs on BBC News HD at 10 a.m. and again at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, May 26.
So it's a repeated broadcast. Are there any specific presenters mentioned for these broadcasts?
The articles don't mention specific presenters for the BBC News broadcasts, but they do mention Lucy Hawkins as the presenter for BBC News Now.
That's interesting. BBC News Now is a separate program, right? When does it air?
Yes, BBC News Now airs on BBC News HD at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, May 26, and also on BBC News at the same time.
I see. So we have both BBC News and BBC News Now airing on different channels at various times. What's the distinction between the two programs?
From what I gather, BBC News covers the latest national and international stories, while BBC News Now focuses on all the big stories live as they happen.
That makes sense. Live coverage is crucial for breaking news. Have we got any other stories related to news broadcasts or programming schedules?
Actually, we do. There's a mention of ITV London weather and BBC London News weather. Let's come back to those later. First, let's move on to another story. A skydiver died after a mid-air collision during a group jump in eastern Washington state.
Oh, that's tragic. What were the details of the incident?
According to the reports, a 70-year-old man died and a woman was injured when the two skydivers collided in midair on Sunday.
Do the articles provide any information about the circumstances of the jump or the group involved?
The reports mention that it was a scheduled group jump. The second skydiver sustained injuries requiring medical treatment.
I see. Were there any specifics about the location or the group size?
The incident occurred near Colville, Washington. The exact group size isn't mentioned in the articles we've got.
Okay, it's always concerning when accidents happen during adventure sports. Let's move on to another story.
There were some developments in the investigation into Desi Freeman's case.
That's right. The articles mention that two men were arrested in connection to Desi Freeman's movements after the Porepunkah shootings.
Exactly. A 48-year-old and a 35-year-old were arrested at separate locations in Northeast Victoria.
What happened to them after the arrest? Were they charged?
According to one of the articles, the two men were later released without charge.
So they were questioned as part of Task Force Summit, but ultimately not charged. Does the reporting give any insight into why they were released?
The articles don't provide specific reasons for their release. It simply states that they were released without charge.
Okay, it's an ongoing investigation, I suppose. Let's move on to another story.
There's been a tragic incident in Seoul involving an overpass collapse.
Yes, an aging overpass in Seoul undergoing removal partially collapsed, leaving 3 people dead and 3 others injured.
That's devastating. Were there any specifics about the overpass or the demolition work?
The Sosamon overpass had been undergoing demolition work since September. Television footage showed emergency workers conducting a search and rescue operation.
I can imagine. It's a complex and dangerous operation. Do the articles mention if there were any workers on site at the time of the collapse?
The reports don't explicitly state that, but it's likely that there were workers or people in the vicinity given the nature of the demolition work.
That makes sense. Let's touch on the weather stories now. We've got some information about weather broadcasts on ITV and BBC.
Right. ITV London weather airs on ITV1 London Plus at 4:59 on Tuesday, May 26.
And what about the BBC weather coverage? Are there any specific programs or times mentioned?
Yes, there's a mention of Weather for the Week Ahead airing on BBC One London at 1:25 a.m. on Wednesday, May 27th. Also, BBC London News Weather airs on BBC One London HD at 1:35 p.m. on Tuesday, May 26.
So we have multiple weather updates across different channels and times. Is there any specific weather forecast or warning mentioned in the articles?
The articles don't provide specific forecasts or warnings. They just list the programs and their airing times.
Okay, well, that's a good overview of the various news stories and broadcasts for today. Let's wrap up. Indeed, it's been a mix of news, investigations, accidents, and weather updates. As we close, it's clear that there are many ongoing stories to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. Thanks for going through these stories with me, Sarah.
Likewise, Sean. Until next time, let's sign off.
Cheers.